Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McCusick. We're here back to talk about the offense in part two of the episode. If you missed part one, had a great discussion with Brandon Croxton, who remains with me here, talking about various scheme elements of the Ravens offense. And it was just an utter pleasure to talk about all of the things that went right in a game for the Ravens. Very, very little in the way of flaws from this performance.
Right, exactly. Yeah, this was a great performance, a great win against a very quality opponent. And let's talk about what you thought about the offensive line.
All right, well, it sounds great. We'll start, I guess, with the general the offensive line had no sacks and just one quarterback hit allowed. That's a great place to start. They did allow some pressures. They had 3 holding flags in the game, which unfortunately knocked down some of the scores. And the low snap count in the game honestly meant they didn't have as much time to make up for it as they do in a normal game. So some of the scores are a little lower than other services like PFF, who don't weight holding calls as negatively as I do. And I think I have good reason for doing it. I think that they are very significant. And they're a big, obviously, component to stalled drives often are holding calls.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I agree. Holding calls are just almost as bad as sacks. So it's important for offensive linemen not to get called for the whole, a lot of holding calls in any particular game, just like you don't want them to give up sacks. So yeah, I agree. Yeah. They're
trying, and just the same way we look at defensive linemen and any pass rushers, and when they draw a hold, it's a really big deal. It's a nice option for the defense. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. Yep. So what did you think about Stanley today?
That's the obvious place to start, isn't it? So Ronnie, I thought qualitatively had a really good game, and there were elements that weren't perfect, but he was up against Aquara a fair amount of the game. Might have been both Aquaras because I think 95 and 99 were lined up on that side a lot. Hutchinson occasionally was on that side, but not too much. Hutchinson was mostly on the side with Moses on that right side. I thought he played pretty well overall, and he eliminated most negative plays. He did have a quarterback hit that he allowed. I think that was to Aquara, 99. And there's 2 Aquaras, so I don't even try and get them right. I'm just going to be Aquara 99 and Aquara 95 as we go through this. But he also missed some blocks in the game, and most of those missed blocks, in fact, 3 of the 6 missed blocks, were losses at the line of scrimmage where somebody was beating him on the play. That included one time where Lamar ran him out of a pressure. So it would have been a pressure if I scored pressures that way, but Lamar ran for a positive gain. And so he doesn't get a -2 on the play. He gets a 0, but he also gets an adjustment to his adjustment, a downwards adjustment to an adjustment I make for every lineman at the end of the game for how much above the replacement level their opponent was primarily. So anyway, that wasn't great. And 6 missed blocks is not terrible, but for a game with only 55 offensive snaps, actually 54, it's really not that great. So anyway, it was what it was. 2 blocks in level 2, 1-on-1 on pulls, 1 pancake, 1 highlight. I bet you can guess which one that was. And incredible finish, by the way. We talked about this a little bit in the first episode, but he drove that into that defensive back into the drainage ditch behind the end zone on that play. And it's very fortunate he did not get flagged, because I think that would have been in the course of the play, or maybe it wouldn't have been. Maybe they would have called it after the play and they would have kicked off from the 20 or whatever. But it could have been a pretty severe penalty if he'd gotten flagged for it. It would have been very severe if it had moved the ball to 4th and 16 from 4th and 1.
Right. Yeah. Fortunately, I think they would have called it after the touchdown, so yeah. It would have been a kickoff or extra point, whatever they decided. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I wish I had a better score for Ronnie in this game, but I think this is really how I would grade him. Is he had a D, including that, and unfortunately, there's no easy way to come back from 2 holding penalties in a short game. If you have 2 holding penalties, I mean, that's going to drop you about 2 grade levels. He wasn't perfect otherwise, so he lost another grade level in the prospect. But even after adjustment from a tough opponent, a D is the grade I come up with. I do think that his actual play in the game qualitatively says positive things about the rest of the season. I thought he played better than he has from a qualitative standpoint. And I think a lot of people are going to be building a narrative this week about just how well Ronnie played. I don't disagree with it from a qualitative standpoint. I just think the actual events actually really cost the Ravens in some significant ways, particularly those holding calls.
Yeah. Very good point. Yeah. How about let's move on down to left guard with how did Simpson play?
Yeah, so Simpson obviously been having lots of problems with penalties, and this had been an ongoing, really story of his career to date, and he hasn't improved it here in Baltimore. Unfortunately, he's still getting penalized even more than he was in Las Vegas, even after this game. But he didn't get called for anything here. He did have a hold he clearly got away with on a play where Stanley was also called for a hold. So they were both just as guilty, and he got away with one. Other than that, though, he had a very good game. One pressure the entire game, was 5 out of 5 on pulls, and that's an area where he hasn't been really good. Here's the really big thing, though. He only had one missed block, and it was of the push me, pull you variety where he got pulled down by the defensive lineman opposite him. It was Bugs, the number 96, the big guy in the middle. Pulled him right down. And he's had a big problem with that. He gets off balance, leaning forward, gets his hands out there, and he gets pulled down by the jersey very easily by opposing defensive linemen. And this was, another case of that. Now, the good news is that's only one missed block in, all those snaps. And that's a positive finish to the game. Had 3 level 2 blocks, 1 pancake, 1 highlight. By far his best game of the season, and an A for him, which was, honestly, if I'm re-officiating that game, I probably give him the holding call, and he drops about, maybe as far as a C+ in this game from that. But he certainly wouldn't have had an A anymore if he'd had that. So it was anyway a very good game for Simpson. I don't want to mitigate it in any way. He had his best game of the year. I think in a lot of ways this saved him from potentially being replaced by Cleveland at some point this season.
Yeah. It's good to see him improving throughout the season. Hopefully this continues on to the second half of the year. And yeah.
Where are you in terms of giving Cleveland a shot at left guard? Are you at a point with seeing how Simpson has played that it might be reasonable to give Cleveland rotational snaps there? They've done some rotational by series in the past, of course, at a lot of different positions, but certainly on the offensive line.
Right. Yeah. Like you have to wonder what's going on at practice with Cleveland. Like has he earned has he been able to earn any snaps through his practice? How is he practicing? Unfortunately last year he got in Harbaugh's doghouse, which unfortunately sometimes takes too long to get out of.
It's a kennel. It's a large building. Yeah.
Yes. It seems to be a prison almost, and it's very hard to get out. I think he has to show that he's trustworthy enough to be in there. I think I would really like to see him at least in a rotational spot, just because you got to know what you're going to have next year. Mm-hmm. In all likelihood, Simpson will probably not be back. I mean, it's certainly possible. Like, I don't think Simpson's necessarily earned a massive contract, so the Ravens could decide they want to bring him back on a moderate deal. And but you really want to know what you have in Cleveland. And I mean, he would seem to be a lead candidate to be in a competition for either one of the guard spots. So get him some playing time and just let him prove and show what he's got.
It will be a really interesting year next year at guard. I fully expect Andrew Voorhees to take one of the guard spots, and probably the right guard spot, just because much higher draft pedigree, incredible weightlifting background in terms of the bench press at the combine, setting the record with one leg, basically. And he seems to be in good position to take that right guard spot. I don't think Zeitler will be back because the Ravens are just there. They need to find out where they can conserve. And the whole point of picking Voorhees was to try and conserve money. But that left guard spot is it's way up in the air. You've got Cleveland in year 4. You've got, I think, the possibility of re-signing Simpson. And, it's really interesting because I think there could be a lot of variation in terms of where he ends up, but it wouldn't be surprising if a 1-year, $2 million deal might be about the right level for him. I don't think everybody's going to be knocking down the door to sign John Simpson because I think he's had some of the same problems that he had in Las Vegas already with penalties, and it's serious penalties. They're all holds and a personal foul one time. It's been a relatively few number of false starts. He had 2 previous to this year among 17 NFL penalties, 13. I used to know this number exactly because I would spout it all the time, but I think it was 2 false starts, 13 holds, and 2 personal fouls. So of 17 penalties. So I don't know. I don't know that there's a huge market out there for them. And, frankly, when the Ravens got him, there wasn't a huge market for him because he's on the practice squad. And now that he's played a season for the Ravens, so far, there's not some evidence that he's a guy everybody else needs to have. So the question would be, does he play well enough the rest of the year in a starting role that people suddenly realize his value and say, yeah, we got to have him?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. And especially when you think about next year, like if they don't re-sign Simpson, you got Cleveland, Salah, and Voorhees, and that's a lot of unproven pick, yeah, and whatever draft pick they do get. But that's all unproven talent right there at two positions on your offensive line. That's not where you want to be going into next season. But yeah.
Yeah, it really would not be ideal. Voorhees does seem to be the upper body monster that would create the torque you want at right guard to open the front gate on run plays. Now, they don't always have to run right, but most teams are right-handed kind of naturally. Tight end kind of more naturally lines up on the right side and whatnot. And it's more common to have your very powerful guard on the right side and your more mobile guard on the left side who can definitely run his track and whatnot. I'm not sure that by the way matches Cleveland's description either, but or Simpson for that matter. But I'm really thinking about Cleveland. But anyway, I that left guard spot, it may be again another multi-way competition between the other guy, forgotten man here, but Tayshaun Manning is sitting on their practice squad. And that guy, I believe, is one of the players they're really trying to hide for next year. They've got a couple of those on the practice squad right now that I think the Ravens like them more than other teams do. And they're trying to develop them in a way where they don't have to give them away. But Vokalek, Tayshaun Manning, and Lucien are 3 players who I believe are going to be Ravens next year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. I guess we better move on to Linderbaum here.
Yep. How we go to Linderbaum.
All right. So took a step back against a tough interior here. Now we've mentioned Bugs, but they also have Alim McNeil on the inside, who's a terrific player. Alim McNeil. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name exactly. He gave up 1 penetration, 1 pressure. Those were both on consecutive plays and both to Bugs. He had a holding call that did not stall a drive, which is the good news, but it's still a holding call, so that's going to hurt his score a lot. He had 3 missed blocks. 1 of those was a loss at the line of scrimmage. That's not too terrible. And 6 level 2 blocks, 3 out of 4 pulls, and 1 nice highlight combination. So in a shorter game, that's a lot of nice mobility blocks, which is exactly what we expect from Tyler Linderbaum, is him to be able to get out and run in level 2, make some blocks down the field, and move around as well as any lineman can in the NFL in terms of getting down the field. Unfortunately, the holding call and the 2 negative plays and the missed blocks combined to add up to a D for him. You got to avoid holding calls. That's all I can say. Is they're -6 and they're I believe them to be appropriately weighted within my system. I know that PFF doesn't count them nearly as seriously. They're like a -1, I believe, on their +2 to -2 scale, and I throw my arms up in terms of weighting on that and say that's just not how I see it.
What does, just out of curiosity, what does PFF rate a sack given up?
I think it depends on how bad or how he was beaten on the pressure, but it can be certainly as high as minus 1.5. And I think it might be on most sacks, it's minus 1. And so this is interesting because in London, I got to meet Gordon McGuinness for the first time in person. We had about 2 hours at the bar to talk football, talk about what's going on at PFF. And he was kind of teaching me the game of rugby because England was playing in a big rugby game against Australia match, I guess, against Australia. And so I was learning some rules from him on that. That was kind of fun. But he did talk a little bit about that. And this is an area where when you combine things within a model, you have to be very careful about weightings or you run the risk of pyramiding error. And here's what I mean. Let's say you have your run blocks. You have some type of run block that is a plus 0.5 that you want to give out. But you give out that fairly frequently. And you have a negative event like a holding penalty is going to be a minus 1. Well, it wouldn't take too much to see that one holding penalty is going to be a lot worse than two, well-positioned run blocks, even though each of them might add, 2 or 3 yards to a run, let's say. They wouldn't necessarily, because it's not the only thing contributing to those extra 2 or 3 yards. It's one of the things contributing. Whereas a holding flag, you are certifiably responsible for that whole 10-yard loss or acceptance of the play otherwise that can occur from that. So I think that's where a lot of the pyramiding of error can occur. So I've had to be very careful, and I've made adjustments over the time I've had the system to try and make sure that I was getting it right. And the big change that I considered for years, but I never did, was to make penalties minus 2 per 5 yards instead of minus 3 per 5 yards, but then also have an additional minus 2 that would be tacked on if the penalty was post-snap and therefore contained an option for the defense. So an illegal downfield pass would move to minus 4, a holding would still be minus 6, but a personal foul would drop from minus 9 to minus 8, for example. It wouldn't be a massive difference, but it would make me feel better and sleep better at night knowing that I had a little bit better weighting if I made that change. The problem is, when I do it, and I should just go ahead and make that change, then some of the scores don't relativize as well to past years as they have. So, I think PFF is probably going through a little bit of that discussion in their own sense, is that their scores may not relativize in the same way over the course of many years. Sure.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah. How about we move on to Kevin Zeitler at right guard?
Sounds good. Came back as his best game of the year. One pressure was his only negative event. He had 2 missed blocks. One of those is lost at the line of scrimmage. We're already talking about 1 minus 2 and 2 missed blocks. That's pretty good. Lamar did run him out of pressure on one of those missed blocks. So I docked his adjustment a little bit from that, but wouldn't have mattered much because he was already at an A- level prior to 0.90. And if I gave him even 0.01 of his adjustment still, and I gave him 0.02, then he was going to be in the A level. 3 out of 3 on pulls, 2 blocks in level 2, 3 pancakes, 1 highlight combination. And all I can say is thank goodness Zeitler's coming around, because he's had 2 good games now in the last 3. And I was seriously concerned about him from an age and decline in ability standpoint.
Yeah. It's great to see him get better as the season going along. Yeah. It was a worry at the beginning of the season. I saw a lot of the same thing. He looked like agent might have caught up with him, and now he's playing like he has the last 2 years. And it's so huge to have him excelling the way he is. It helps with the run game as well as pass protection. He's a very, very solid guard his whole career, and it's good that he's keeping that level of play up.
Yeah, the difference between Zeitler being at a C- or a D level like he was earlier this year and being at a B level as he's been roughly the last 3 games, we'll say, is that the whole right side of the offensive line now becomes a big strength, because Moses he's been a little bit up and down this year. He had kind of a down game this week, but it wasn't terrible. Most of the time, Moses has been really hanging in there, and Linderbaum has been, increasing, as the season's gone on, although he had an off week this week. So I'm really positive about the right side of the line in particular. But a lot of it hinges on Zeitler continuing at this current level. You can't it can't all be Morgan Moses carrying the right side of this line.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. How about we talk about Morgan?
Okay, so he had the toughest assignment of any lineman. He had Hutchinson most of the snaps on his side. I think Hutchinson was maybe 14 snaps on Stanley's side, and the rest of them he was on the side with Moses. He had 3 full pressures allowed. I think it's really a good testament to him that he didn't have any penalties or other negative events. So he didn't allow the quarterback to get hit. He had a lot of help against Hutchinson. So they lined up Ricard on that side. They had running backs moving there. They had pulling guards. They had all sorts of activity to try and help with Hutchinson. Probably the biggest thing, they had Zeitler and for that matter, Simpson on the other side making a lot of help blocks. So they were trying to, obviously, as a point of emphasis in coaching this week, that they were trying to process from inside out. And Brandon, am I correct? If you play some tackle or guard, where did you play on the offensive line?
Yeah, guard.
Guard. Okay. So talk about processing from inside out and how you go through that on a typical pass play.
So on a pass play, you're typically, if you don't have anybody directly in front of
guard
you,
bubble.
You're looking inside out. So you always want to protect whether you're on your left guard or right guard, the inside right next to the center, and then you're looking for somebody to hit. Generally, like if nobody's there, you're kind of looking to hit the defensive end where the tackle is hitting him, or if the center's got somebody engaged with him, you nudge him and just try to keep that pocket integrity.
So, okay, now let's talk actual mechanics of this. So, a lot of times you see in the NFL that the guard will have their inside hand on the center's assignment, trying to kind of pick up clues from how he's going to move as they process. And then I think the order is stunts and then blitzes, or blitzes then stunts, and either way works. But you've got two potential ways that people can be coming from off ball or on ball to loop around into a gap that you need to then patrol. And then you've got the help block is kind of your last concern. But if it's too far down the list, you're too late to help on that block. You're too late to be of any help, right?
Right. Yeah. So. Mm-hmm.
And the one last question I want to ask you about this is very interesting. Actually, talking to linemen is great about this. When you try and help block, did you try and deliver kind of a painful help block? Did you try to automatically go to the midsection of the player, or did you try and push him and maybe try for a pancake and go up higher on him? What was your modus operandi there?
I would always try to get the ribs. Get a nice shot right in the ribs. Is it something where at the high school level or even in the MEAC that you could get away with a good punch to the ribs as you were moving over? Or is it something that you didn't really want to take that chance, particularly at the high school level? Yeah, no, it's not really a punch, but a very good shove.
Yeah, just a little nudge. Okay, got it.
And I mean, you start with the helmet and your arms inside, and then shove all together. But yeah.
All right, very good. So you see running backs do that when they go for the midsection on a chip block. They throw their whole weight in there. They're really using their shoulder pads generally to rib the guy. They're not using their arms. They're not right. Going with their hands.
Right. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Now, did you spend any time at defensive end, or you pretty much always defensive tackle, such that you had to face a number of chip blocks on the outside?
I didn't face that many chip blocks on the outside, but yeah, like it would mostly be like if I was able to get by the tackle fast enough, then I'm taking on a running back. But yeah, I didn't get chipped that much.
All right.
Chipping is the worst. Well, the center hitting you is the worst. Me as a defensive lineman, I have very low opinions of centers. I call them they're nothing but cheap shot artists.
That's good. Okay, so to a defensive tackle, every center is a cheap shot. Now I'm going to use that. You've jargonized it for me.
Yeah. Because what does a center do? They look left, they look right, and then they hit somebody in the ribs that's not looking. So.
The least protected guy. Yes. Yeah. Make it look like you're making like you have work. And you're
right.
All right. That's great. That's really some great inside football there. So anyway, we talked about him giving up some pressures here, 3 pressures in the game, but no other negative events. 8 missed blocks for Moses. Now, a lot of those were losses at the line of scrimmage. So Hutchinson really had his way with him in terms of getting push and in terms of his spin move beating him. He didn't really have an answer for that. Lamar ran him out of pressures twice. Now, Hutchinson's one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. I would have given him the full possible adjustment in this case, but I took about 2/3 of that away because Lamar ran him out of those 2 pressures. So otherwise, it's still, I think the way he stood up to Hutchinson, I'd be very proud of that game if I were Morgan Moses. And yet he didn't really have an answer for a lot of what he's bringing. 3 level 2 blocks, 4 pancakes. That's a lot for one football game, by the way, 4 pancakes. 6 out of 7 on pulls. He did have 2 freebies as a trailer. Moses almost never gets a free point as the trailer on a counter play. So if there's a 2-man pull going to either side, the trailing player does not have the block as long as none is presented to him and he doesn't miss one. So as long as he runs his track properly and there's no one here to block, then he gets a point for that, because the first guy almost always has an opportunity, but the second guy doesn't always have an opportunity. But Moses almost always finds someone, and for him to get 2 freebies in a single game is I will call it unusual. He's probably only had 2 other free points in the last 10 games or so, I think. So anyway, all put together, C- after adjustment for Moses. Worse things have happened. The fact that Hutchinson never did knock the quarterback down in this game is certainly a big positive. And he had some pressures, but Lamar obviously did a really good job working with that.
Yeah. He did have one particular block that I really liked. He pulled to the left, and it was on a run by Gus, and he got around the corner, and I think it was the linebacker that was coming in, and he really cleaned his clock, and it sprung Gus for about, I think, an 8 or 9 yard gain on the left side early in the game. So it was, that was one of the things I liked.
Yeah, I didn't actually put this in here, but on his on the Gus's touchdown, which is a run right for 2 with unbalanced right line. This is the one we talked about earlier, where he's actually on the inside of the formation, and Likely is outside of him, and then Stanley's outside of Likely. He pulled on that play, had a level 2 pancake block in the end zone, basically, that completely cleared the lane there for Gus to get in without much of the contact. It was on the linebacker 55. That's not Anzalone and it's not Campbell, but I don't remember what his name is. It's the other guy, we'll call him.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Talk about the other 3 guys real quickly. Cleveland had 1 snap as the 6th offensive lineman. He had 3 others at left guard on that last series. He made all 4 of his blocks, 1 of them in level 2. Fa'alele came in to play the last series at right tackle and made all 3 of his blocks. And McCary made 2 out of 3 on the final series at center. McCary's first action at center, I think, in a while. Now, that's not – let's see. Yeah, right. Mustafer went in to play when Linderbaum got hurt, right? I guess McCary might have got some time in that game because I'm not 100% sure Mustafer was active. That
right.
Back about it.
Yeah, I don't think he was active for the game. Yeah.
So anyway, offensive line, I think, qualitatively, again, really happy. Harbaugh really praised the offensive line. Scoring wise, it was a little bit mixed. So didn't have great games for Linderbaum, Stanley, or even Moses. Did have good games from both guards. Overall, I thought, though, they got the job done, generally speaking, but even more so, Lamar got the job done when pressure arrived, and he either ran out of it for positive yards or he threw out of it for unbelievable yards. Right.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah.
All right. Well, how about we move on and talk about the skill position players then? Start us off with one you had some thoughts about.
Sure. Let's like to talk about Pat Ricard. It was again, I love a big man rumbling down the field. he had a
Aaron Rodgers' season is officially over, but yours has just begun at MyBookie. NFL, college ball, and a brand new cash out system gives you options to bet and win all season long. First two legs of your parlay hit, cash out early and place another bet, or let it ride for a chance at an even bigger payday. Join us at MyBookie for an entire season filled with daily odd boost, same-game parlays, and huge prize pool contests. Right now, MyBookie has a no-strings-attached cash bonus that lets you deposit and withdraw quick. Use the promo code RAVENS on your first deposit of $50 or more, and you can receive up to $200 in cash instantly credited to your MyBookie account. That's promo code RAVENS to claim your cash bonus now. You can bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only with MyBookie. With the busy fall season already in swing, you might be looking for wholesome, convenient meals for jam-packed days. Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit, can help you fuel up for breakfast, lunch, and dinner with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved, ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. You'll save time, eat well, and stay on track with your healthy lifestyle. Guys, I've shared moving. I was using this for all my meals. Now I'm working from home. Guess what? Microwaves in the other room. I'm using this for all my meals. Factor is how I get through my lunch day every day. But they've got breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I haven't tried the breakfast ones yet, but why not? I think I might add that to my next order. But I love them for lunch. Plus, they've got new autumn fall flavors out right now for limited time, featuring seasonal veggies like cranberry, pecan chicken, and apple Dijon pork chops. And again, just like everything else, they're ready in just 2 minutes. They'll satisfy your fall cravings during this busy season without the hassle. So go ahead and level up with Gourmet Plus options as well. Prepared to perfection by chefs and ready to eat in record time. Treat yourself to upscale meals with premium ingredients like broccoli, leeks, truffle butter, and asparagus. Head to factormeals.com/Ravens50 and use the code RAVENS50 to get 50% off. That's code RAVENS50 at factormeals.com/Ravens50 to get 50% off your Factor meal today.
You know, like you said, the second longest play by a 300-pound player in NFL history. So, I mean, very big play, and he's just a solid force. His run blocking and, being able to recognize that blitz and leak out and get out there in the wide open field. It was a nice play, and he's just a solid player every week.
Yeah, been real excited. They're using him on a lot more routes. We kind of talked about that in the first episode. I'd encourage people to go back and download that if you haven't listened to it. Lots of interesting stuff in there. But Ricard's varied usage this year has been one of the kind of the stamps that Monken has put on the offense. Not afraid to have him go down the field a little bit. It's not 100% flat routes. It's not what we saw even in the Titans game in the playoffs in 2020 when they were having trouble jump-starting the offense, but getting Ricard out into the flat, they used 3 times on one drive to move right down the field and score. They just found a way other than point of attack play to make use of him. But he in the entire Roman era, he did not run much in the way of longer routes. I think he might have run a couple of wheel routes the entire time Roman was here. You remember a couple of wheel routes over the years?
Yeah, maybe 1 or 2. Yeah, it's very rare though. Yeah. Yeah.
But still providing everything the Ravens need out of him as a blocker. I think it would be, we almost have to talk about him with the offensive line in this game because he had a huge responsibility as a set and chip blocker in this game, primarily as a set blocker. And a lot of it was against Hutchinson. So they gave Moses a lot of extra help on that side, and he was responsible. I don't know how much we can go by this, but Hutchinson clearly wants no part of him as a guy who only has to put in occasional effort as a blocker, meaning he's not on the field every play and he's always kind of fresh to go against a player like Hutchinson. Hutchinson didn't want any part of him. And it almost looked like if you put Ricard in there at tackle because you had to, that he might even be able to do that job. Now, I know that's not true, but it's great to think that after you watch him play against a top pass rusher like that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. How about you?
All right, let's talk about Nelson Aguilar, who only had one catch the entire game, but that was a beauty, and it's a big trust throw from Lamar that Aguilar is still working to get open on that touchdown pass after 9 seconds. And really, really nice to see him work to find space. And it didn't even look like it had to be a lot. It seemed like he was getting more depth than he was width towards the left side again, which I think probably was appropriate because Lamar doesn't want to throw back against the grain any more than he has to. He probably would prefer to put it towards the back of the end zone where it's a my guy or no guy kind of a pass.
Right. Yeah. It was looking at that play. Lamar focused on Aguilar, I think, for the last 3 or 4 seconds, and Aguilar just kept working and working, and finally was able to break away at the last second, and Lamar got it to him. You love your receivers working that long on any particular play, just to keep working and moving to find an area, to find some space for your quarterback to make a play. And it's a special feature of Lamar that when he breaks the pocket, he's still looking. He's not necessarily looking to run. He still breaks that pocket to find somebody open down the field. And that receiver, if and find that open space, and that's exactly what Aguilar did for the big touchdown.
Yeah, great individual play. Who's your next guy?
Yeah, want to talk about Rashad Bateman. It was good to see him. Had made a really nice catch on third down, not only getting open, but pass was a little bit behind him, and he was able to reach back and make a very nice snag to catch it. And then he also had, I think the very next play, he had another 15-yard gain on a nice pass. And it's good to see him back in the offense. And he's so important down the line for the rest of the season and into next year of developing that trust and just keep making plays. And it's exciting to see him out there.
Yeah, one of the things we talked about a little bit is that, bust or no bust is not a binary thing for Bateman. You don't have to categorize him in one or the other. I mean, he's going to be whatever receiver he can be now for the Baltimore Ravens at this point. And the Ravens hopefully will get real value. And, I still look at him and say he's the only true X receiver on this team. A great route runner. You want to get him in space where a corner can make a big mistake against him. He can make a big play. Even the opposing team's best cornerback can still make a bad play at the top of the route with what Bateman is throwing off in terms of wiggle at the top of the route. So he's still a very dangerous weapon, and I hope that they are able to get the most they can out of him. I think we are probably past the point where it is likely that he'll be back for his 5th-year option, but you never know for sure if things immediately turned around now. Obviously, that would be a possibility. And regardless, they just need to get whatever they can out of Bateman over the course of these next 27 games or so, plus whatever playoffs they're in. And hopefully, that's as good as it can be. But it doesn't really provide value to talk about Bateman as a bust or not. It's not valuable to do that. What's important to do is how can Bateman help the Ravens for the remainder of his 27 games here? Not how do we, drag this guy through the mud and try and figure out why he's useless, or try and make the other argument that he's been great, which is very difficult to make, frankly, at this point. It's what's important is where's he going from here?
Right, exactly. Yeah, like I agree that he's probably not going to get that 5th-year option, but he can still be a big part of the offense these next year and a half, and hopefully down the line, maybe even if they don't pick up the 5th year, that doesn't mean that they won't extend him after next year. So just we want to see him healthy out there, producing and making plays, and just keep getting better as the year goes on.
Yeah, that could well be an interesting counter in there. Could you sign him for 3 years, 21 million or something after the season ends, because you still like him as a receiver and you still think he could be good? It's just been injuries have kind of made it impossible for you to pay that 50-year option money. And maybe there's a mid-range deal, or maybe there's a 1-year deal that he gets signed to at the end of 4 years. So either way, it's all about, him. I just love the fact that he was reintegrated into the offense, and I thought he did some good things with trust early in the game. I did think that he did not track the ball well on his incompletion, but at least he got two good length catches on his first two plays. That I think it was 36 yards he got. So 12 yards per target in this game is more than you can hope for realistically from a receiver. And he's been a good yards per target guy in the past. And so, hopefully this is something that he can return to and be that X that the Ravens really need.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about Edwards here for a second. Obviously ran the ball fairly effectively. At times he was really good. At times he was just too darn much for the Lions in terms of running over people. Had a 2-yard touchdown run, which was that was well blocked all the way across the line. So it wasn't just Edwards doing that, but cut into his yards per carry statistics very slightly to have a 2-yard run there. But he also broke free and had some nice breakaway yards in this game where he had 2 forced tackles missed in the second level that were nice, and had I think he had the 20-yard run that immediately preceded Hill's 27-yard run, but I might be wrong about who had which on that series. But it was nice to see the Ravens put together several good runs in a row.
Yeah, Gus is a very strong runner. Like, you aren't going to bring him down with an arm tackle, or you really have to put your helmet in and wrap up with him. And when he gets that full head of steam and he gets to that second level without being touched, that's when he can easily break a 15 or 20-yard run. Also on that big 80-yard pass, I think he made an excellent adjustment to get out in the flat past the blitzers and get in a nice little space for Lamar to find him and just make that big play, because it was a great read by Lamar, and him handling the blitz has been a trouble spot, and the way he handled it on Sunday was just a thing of beauty.
Handled the blitz as a receiver, or handled the blitz as a blocker, you're saying?
I'm sorry. I meant Lamar how he has handled the blitz in the past. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I thought Edwards had some. It would be funny if it weren't not funny. He had some really bad missed blocks in this game. Had a complete whiff on an attempted cut block, unfortunately. But let's stick with the positive here, because hey, this is a happy time here. We don't want to be completely floating in the clouds after a win like this. But I thought he ran well. But even more importantly, what you said about making space behind the defense, I thought was absolutely critical. I think we hit on this earlier in the first part of the show, if I recall correctly, he really kind of channeled his inner Mark Andrews to find a spot where no one was, and it just had to trust that Lamar wouldn't be trying to throw the ball where he was prior. And getting behind those 2 defenders and having 2 linemen chasing him essentially down the field was a thing of beauty. It was a lot of fun to watch that horse race, and it took a lot of time for that safety to get across the field.
Yep, absolutely. How about we go to Odell?
Sure.
Yeah, I think he is a really solid, third to fourth option for this team. Can be shorthanded. Unfortunately, he didn't do his creative draw penalty like he has earlier in the season with the pass interference and the illegal contact and the flop he had in London. But he just solid route runner, solid hands. Just a real nice veteran presence on the team that has a lot of young receivers. So good to see him
Yeah.
make some plays.
I did not actually see what happened, but one of the other, what it kind of looked like this to me on tape after somebody else suggested this might have happened. But when Simmons was down on the ground in London, I think he stepped on his hand. And you as a defensive lineman, you do not want your hands stepped on, do you, by anybody?
No, no. Like I guess that's how apparently that's how he reacted. What caused it was him stepping on his hand. I couldn't tell exactly, but he did get really close to Simmons while he was getting up.
Yeah.
And he got in the face because he thought Simmons hit Zay late, but yeah, it was nice that he drew that penalty with the flop. So yeah.
It's a veteran move, but it certainly adds to the entire mystique of who Odell Beckham is, that he's already kind of an anti-hero and kind of fits the diva mold of wide receivers in a lot of ways. But then he pulls this crap and the rest of the league just hates him like nobody's business. And now what's been, the pull down play, the pass interference on the cutoff in week 1 and it's really been 3 penalties. And he had another DPI that was just a fairly legitimate DPI, but 3 penalties he's drawn this year, which has been just veteran move after veteran move.
Yeah.
I like that about him. I'm less thrilled about who he is as a receiver. And in fact, on a day where Lamar is throwing for, whatever it was per pass, 13 yards or so per every time he drops back, and Beckham has 7 yards to target, that's less exciting. So I think he had 7 targets for 49 in this game, if I recall. One of the things that held Beckham back was he was terrible after the catch. And I had some space after the catch on 1 or 2 throws, but he had other ones where he didn't have space and he made negative yak out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, still hopeful he can be a help for the Ravens, but I think their best bet is if he's not the primary. And, you're talking about him being the 4th or 5th receiving option. That's perfect. You have 1 tight end and 3 receivers you like better. That's kind of the ideal situation.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
We probably can't get by this without talking about Zay Flowers, who had another terrific game. He's at a historic level in terms of utilization for a rookie receiver. We saw that, I think, 50 yards in his first 7 games. He's only the 2nd receiver ever to do that since in the Super Bowl era, I think it is, or maybe since the merger.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But remarkable in either case. It's that's quite a start, and it's almost like we're taking for granted now what he's bringing to the table as a receiver, but expecting him never to get shut out, which is probably true. He's probably going to have a very hard time getting shut out with all the gadgetry they use him on. But still, it's remarkable that he's been able to pile up yards the way he has.
Yeah, it's exciting to see. Ravens finally hitting on a receiver like this is exciting. Exciting for the franchise, exciting for fans. And he's an exciting player. And what I really, just would love to see is just him getting in that second level more and getting passes there and having him use that agility and his ability to break tackles and make people miss in that second level for long gains. And yeah, teams are definitely aware of his speed. They fear his speed and his ability to get in that second level and get some open space is going to be huge for some big plays.
All right, outstanding. I'm kind of ready to tap out in terms of skill position players. We do have a mailbag to go through. I want to talk MVPs with you. If you don't have your MVP list, make one up 3, 2, 1 if you can, and we'll go through that process. But if you're good, unless there's another player you want to talk about, we'll jump into the mailbag questions.
Yeah, let's go to mailbag.
All right. So Zach Serpa Weinberg, I hope I have that correct. It's not Kerpa Weinberg, but we'll just do it that, or Z Weinberg 18. Says, by my very unofficial calculation, the Ravens are 5th in number of plays gaining 20-plus yards, yet one of only 2 teams with 0 TDs of 20-plus yards, the Falcons being the other. Is there something about their system that leads to non-TD big plays, or is this just a fun, small sample size quirk? That's a great question. I can't think of any reason why having more long plays wouldn't also correlate pretty well with having more touchdowns. And it's not necessarily a cause and effect thing, but I'm very surprised by that combination of 5th in number of plays and 0 TDs accruing from them. I think my tendency is to say quirk of small sample size, but I wouldn't rule it out. What do you think? Is there any?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a quirk of small sample size. If you're breaking long runs or long passes, generally, you might only have one person to beat, and for whatever reason, that one person's been able to get the person down. But I think the big thing, he said, they're 5th in big plays. That's where you want to be. You want to be at the top of the league at big plays. So you can handle, I'll take a 1st and goal from the 4 any day, even if they don't necessarily score on a long play.
Yeah, they've been good. They've been good in goal to go situations, so that's nice to see. But that's a very, very interesting statistic. Thanks for sending us that. We got another one, Minion Hunter here, a regular listener of the show, one of the really loyal listeners. By the way, I don't do enough of thanking people who listen to the show regularly, because it really is terrific that you guys do that. You guys have an unbelievable collective memory of calling me on stuff I've said and saying, well, this isn't consistent with this. Or that you remember some specific comment I've made about how I score things or whatever. You're an incredible group here. I'm getting older now, and I'm going to make some more mistakes, I'm afraid, but I really appreciate the loyalty you guys have. And I know that you guys are just, we're what keeps the show going anyway, is the fact that people are still listening. But Minion Hunter asked the question, can you please talk about the decision to take the ball to start? Did they get the wind in their favor or not at the end of the game? It didn't seem to matter in the end unless attacking first was the key to success, but it was interesting on such a blustery day. So Harbaugh addressed this in the post-game press conference and was asked exactly that question, is why did you take the ball first? So the idea is that if you defer, then you get the choice to take the ball or pick the direction in the second half. So by not deferring, by taking the ball first, they put the Lions in the position where they either had to take the ball first in the second half or get the wind in their favor in the final quarter. As it turned out, it didn't really matter at that point because the score was already 28-0, right, at halftime? I think that's right.
Right. Yep.
So it was an interesting choice. It was a windy day. The Harbaugh's explanation makes sense from that perspective. And one of the things about high win games is they take away a lot of the value from Justin Tucker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Unfortunate.
Good. Yeah.
All right, let's move on. We'll talk about the MVPs. Go down 3, 2, 1 if you like. Who's your number 3 guy?
Okay. My number 3 was Gus Edwards. Had a terrific game, scored a touchdown, had a lot of tough yards early in the game and started to break some longer runs later. And of course, a big 80-yard reception. And, whenever your running back gets almost 150 total yards, that's a great game. So kudos to Gus and great game.
Yeah. I'm loving the notion of seeing even more of that in terms of what he can do to create space on a late leak out play, because there will be some opportunities this year. That play, they kind of moved the pocket effectively, didn't they? They had extra protectors in and they slid the pocket to the right as a mechanism to get away from some of the Lions pass rush. And that ended up being an opportunity for a very nice play as it turned out. So there have been receivers in Ravens history, and even running backs and fullbacks who've been good at that. Ray Rice, of course, but even players like Ovi Mahaley is a guy I remember as being a guy who could find space fairly effectively on a catch, and really had a great stretch run in the 2006 season. Edwards, if he can become that kind of guy, I think it would really be a special additional dimension to his game. He's also my number 3 guy, by the way.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Fair. So, number 2, I had Mark Andrews, who was typical Pro Bowl tight end Mark Andrews. It was such a threat. Had really nice, on his first touchdown, really nice way to get to the edge and get in the end zone, reaching for the pylon. Had the other big catch on the I guess it was probably a fake quarterback sweep rollout, and then he leaked into the backfield and almost scored. And then he got down to like the 2 or 3 yard line, and another nice catch in the end zone for his second touchdown. I mean, he's heck of a tight end, and this is he's definitely one of the top 5 tight ends in the league, and this game just showed you why.
We are 2 for 2 on matching up here, and I'm not even sure I have that much to add to what he did. Andrews is doing some nice things as a blocker to help out in the run game, but his main use obviously is as a receiver. The Ravens, I thought, in this game did a pretty good job of rotating through their receivers, which was something we didn't talk about during the show, but nobody among the receiving core had more than 44 snaps, I think it was, for Flowers. I might even be wrong about that, but yeah, 44 for Andrews, 43 for Flowers out of 60. So nobody's playing every snap. The Ravens are pretty much rotating in some fresh legs. I think that's worked out very well. And I think back to Andrews and his first couple of years, and particularly in 2019, when he had a very high percentage of targets when he was in the game. So when he was in, he's almost like a designated receiver, and that actually kind of drove James Hurst out of town. He just wasn't getting the football enough for his liking in that 2019 season.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Hayden Hurst, I think you meant.
Hey, I'm sorry. What did I say? James Hurst.
James Hurst.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We had other ways to drive James Hurst out of town, but that's part of that getting old thing I was talking about, and making more mistakes.
Sure. Yeah.
And now nobody has to correct it in Twitter tomorrow. That's good.
There you go. Yeah. And well, I think pretty obvious who the number 1 is, and that's Lamar Jackson. Absolutely incredible game. When he's on like this, there's very few quarterbacks that are better. Patrick Mahomes, I think, is the only quarterback I would take above him. It's just excellent, such a threat as a runner, and just manipulates the defense so well. And when he can manipulate and capitalize on that manipulation like he did against the Lions, it's almost an unstoppable defense. It's all offense, excuse me. And yeah, he was just in the zone, and hopefully this is just the beginning of a great run by the offense, and continue that. They're just continue to be consistent, throughout the year, and put up some points and win a lot of games.
Yeah, definitely. Also my number 1 guy. What we talked about in the first episode a little bit is worth going back to listen to potentially, but his performance under pressure is one of the most extreme statistics I've ever seen in covering the NFL for a number of years. He's 22.4 yards per play under pressure. So 10 plays under pressure, 224 passing yards. I can't remember any other statistic that was any more extreme than that. And to give you a kind of a rough number, I'd say 4.0 yards per play when you're under pressure is good. That's what, I used to hope for about that from Joe Flacco. Didn't always work out that well. The Ravens have held some teams to negative yards under pressure this year already. So really great game from Lamar. It's going to be one of the vintage Lamar games. I'm sure it's been when Lamar's career is over and we want to, show our children how great Lamar was. It's going to be this game, the game against the Colts in 2021, the game against LA in 2019, and the game against Miami for the opener in 2019. We're going to show them, in addition, hopefully, to some Super Bowl in the future.
Yeah.
But this was a great one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, the highlight of him just moving around and keeping that play alive for 9.3 seconds. Hopefully that's the highlight right there. So, yeah, absolutely. Great game.
That was very special. Brandon, just an absolute pleasure always to talk football with you. Tell folks where they can talk football with you online.
Sure. I'm on Twitter at Brandon Croxton 5. Love to talk Ravens, love to talk football, and looking forward to hopefully a take care of business game against the Cardinals this Sunday. There
you go. I think we're all hoping for that as 8.5-point favorites, that they don't lose focus here and make this more difficult than it ought to be against the Arizona Cardinals. It's an NFL game, so they can't take it lightly, but they need to really go in there and whoop some ass, in my opinion.
Right.
Other folks out there, if you'd like to be on a Film Study short, hit me up. DMs are always open on Twitter. I want to hear from you. I'll get back to you very quickly. We'll decide if there's a kernel for a show. Again, keep the topic kind of small, and it has the best chance to be made into something that is useful and can get an audience, a new audience, brought into a Film Study that might otherwise be discouraged by these longer episodes like Brandon and I have just recorded here, which are a lot of fun for us anyway. But not everybody wants to listen to a full hour on football, or they don't know that they want to listen to a full hour on football until they hear one of these already that's shorter. So I know how I choose videos on the Ukraine. I tend to not look at 45-minute videos. I tend to want to hear, a 6-minute Times radio update instead. So I am conscious of what we're doing in terms of extending episodes can be a little bit off-putting to people, and I hope we can make them shorter. But in any case, Brandon, thanks again for joining me for a great afternoon of talking about football.
Yeah, absolutely. Love talking.
And we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.